The Nexus Gate was a wound in space itself, a massive corridor of stable hyperspace that connected the outer rim to the core worlds. It was beautiful in its own way, swirling colors and impossible geometries that hurt to look at for too long. It was also the perfect place for a last stand. Fleet Admiral Soman stood on the bridge of her flagship, the KSNS Indomitable, and watched the defensive perimeter form. 43 human warships had made it to the Nexus, 28 ships from other species, hastily retrofitted with manual controls and human advisors aboard. 71 ships total to face an enemy that numbered in the hundreds. All ships report ready. Commander Yuna transmitted from the Taguki. Captain Jinho had given her tactical coordination, while he focused on overall strategy. She was good at her job, and she would need to be. This was going to be the hardest fight of her life. On the Taiguki, Ambassador Chris was strapped into a station on the bridge. He had spent 2 days learning human communication protocols. He understood now why humans kept things so simple. When your life depended on clear orders being executed quickly, you did not waste time with elegant phrasing. Ambassador, test your communication link, Jinho ordered. Chris activated the channel to the Veltorian ships that had joined the fleet. This is Liaison Chris to all Veltorian vessels. Communications check, 5 voices responded. 5 ships. That was all that remained of the mighty Veltorian fleet after the emergency retrofits, but they were ready to fight. Sir, contact on long-range sensors, Lieutenant Junho reported. His voice was steady, but his hands were gripping his console tightly. Multiple signatures, counting. 237 enemy vessels. Size? Varies. Smallest are frigate class. Largest is... Junho paused, checking his readings again. Sir, the largest is 3 times the size of the Taguki. Soman closed her eyes briefly. 237 against 71. And their largest ship dwarfed humanity's biggest vessel. The odds were worse than she had feared. All ships, battle stations, Samin ordered. Pilots to your craft. Engineering crews prepare damage control. Medical teams stand by. Throughout the fleet, thousands of beings prepared for combat. Human crews moved with the practiced efficiency of years of training. Alien crews tried to copy them, their movements awkward but determined. Everyone knew what failure meant. If they lost here, the Devourers would sweep through the core worlds unchallenged. Pilot Diho was already strapped into his fighter, his hands on the manual controls. Around him, 200 other fighters were launching from the human carriers. He had trained these pilots personally, humans and aliens both. They were ready. All wings, this is Deho. Remember your training. Manual flight only. No computer assistance. Trust your instincts. Trust each other. And when things get bad, keep flying. Copy that lead, his wingman responded. It was a Veltorian pilot named Rena, one of the few who had adapted quickly to manual flight. We are with you. The Devourer fleet entered visual range. Their ships were nightmares made of metal and light, constantly shifting and reconfiguring. They moved in perfect formation, each ship coordinating with the others through their networked intelligence. They were beautiful and terrible, the ultimate expression of machine efficiency. Here they come, Jinho said quietly. All ships, weapons free. Fire at will. The human fleet opened fire first. Railgun rounds and missiles streaked across the void. Simple weapons. Dumb weapons. Weapons that could not be hacked or controlled because they had no computers to hack. They slammed into the Devourer ships and some of them hit. Metal crumpled. Hull breaches appeared, but there were so many enemy ships and they were closing fast. The Devourers returned fire. Directed energy beams, incredibly precise and powerful, lanced out toward the human fleet. But the Devourers had a problem. They were used to fighting enemies whose ships were controlled by computers. Enemies whose movements were predictable because they followed programmed responses. Human ships moved erratically, each captain making independent decisions. The Devourers' perfect calculations were suddenly worthless. Still, they adapted quickly. They began firing spread patterns covering more area. They began predicting human tactics, and their numbers were overwhelming. Hull breach decks 9 through 14, an officer shouted on the Taiguki. Seal them, Jinho ordered. Reroute power around the damage. The ship shuddered as another energy beam struck home. Armor melted and boiled away. Systems failed, but the crew kept working, kept fighting. This was what they had trained for. This was what humans did. On the Indomitable, Soman watched her tactical display with growing concern. They were inflicting damage on the enemy, but not enough. For every Devourer ship they destroyed, it felt like two more took its place. Her fleet was being worn down. All ships fall back to secondary positions, Simeon ordered. Tighten the formation. Concentrate fire. The human fleet began to contract, ships pulling closer together. The Devourers pressed their advantage, moving to surround them. But tighter formation meant overlapping fields of fire. It meant human gunners could support each other. It meant every shot counted. Deho's fighter wing was in the thick of it now, weaving between capital ships and dodging enemy fire. They were targeting the Devourer's largest vessel, trying to disable its weapons. Rena was flying on his wing, her movements getting better with each passing second. Target their sensor arrays, Deho ordered. Make them blind. His wing dove toward the massive ship, missiles and gunfire raking its hull. They lost 3 fighters in the approach, but they hit their target. The Devourer ship's precision fire became less precise. It was a small victory, but they needed every advantage. Then disaster struck. One of the Veltorian support ships, still learning manual operation, made a critical error. It drifted too close to a Devourer cruiser. Energy beams sliced through its jury-rigged armor. The ship broke apart, its crew lost in seconds. Ambassador Chris watched it happen on his display. Those were his people, his species, dead because they had relied too long on technology and forgotten how to fight manually. Rage and grief filled him in equal measure. Chris, I need you focused, Jinho said, not unkindly. Grief comes after the battle. Right now, we need you working communications. Chris took a shaky breath and nodded. Understood, Captain. The battle had been raging for 20 minutes. It felt like hours. The human fleet had lost 8 ships. The Devourers had lost 31. But there were still over 200 enemy vessels, and the humans were running out of ammunition and options. Sir, the Taiguchi has taken critical damage, Junho reported. His station was sparking, smoke rising from damaged circuits. Fusion Reactor 3 is offline. Armor breaches on 18 decks. We have lost 60% of our railguns. Can we still fight? Jinho asked. Yes, sir. We can still fight. Then we fight. Commander Yuna was coordinating the remains of the fleet from her backup station, the primary tactical center having been destroyed 10 minutes ago. Admiral Soman, we need a new strategy. We cannot win by attrition. Soman knew she was right. They were losing. Slowly but surely they were being overwhelmed. She looked at the tactical display, searching for an answer. The Devourer fleet was concentrated now, pressing their advantage. Their largest ship was at the center, coordinating the others. An idea formed. A terrible, desperate idea, but it might work. All ships, this is Soman. Prepare to execute emergency scatter on my mark. Form small groups and engage independently. Do not try to hold formation. Just keep them busy. Admiral? Yuna sounded confused. That will leave us vulnerable. Trust me, Commander. Captain Park, I need the Taiguchi for something. Jinho understood immediately. He had been thinking the same thing. You want us to ram the command ship. It is the only way to break their coordination. If we destroy their central control, the others will be less effective. They will have to operate independently. We will not survive the approach, Jinho said calmly. The Taiguchi is already critically damaged. We will not make it through their defensive fire. I know, Soman said quietly. I am sorry, Jinho. Captain Jinho Park looked around his bridge. His crew was battered, exhausted, bleeding, but they were still fighting, still refusing to quit. He thought about the exercise 3 weeks ago. He thought about humanity's long, bloody history. He thought about the lesson that 8,000 years of war had taught his species. You do not win by being strongest. You win by refusing to lose. Attention all hands, Jinho said, his voice carrying through the ship. This is the captain. We have been given a mission. We are going to ram the enemy command ship. It will likely destroy us, but it will break their coordination and give our fleet a chance to win. I am proud to have served with all of you. If anyone wishes to evacuate, now is the time. Nobody moved. Nobody left their station. Lieutenant Junho grinned despite the smoke and fire around him. Sir, with respect, where would we go? We are in the middle of a battle. Fair point, Jinho smiled back. Helm, set course for that big ship in the center. Maximum speed. Engineering, give me everything you have got. Weapons, fire everything we have left. The Taiguchi turned toward the Devourer command ship like a wounded animal, making one last charge. Its engines burned at maximum power. Its remaining weapons fired continuously. The first warning came from the outer colonies. A simple distress call that cut off mid-transmission. Then silence. Fleet Admiral Soman Ryu was in her office on Earth when the second call came through. Then a third. Then 10 more, all from different colonies, all saying the same thing before going dark. Unknown ships. Systems failing. Cannot fight back. Requesting immediate, and then nothing. Soman pulled up the tactical map of the galaxy. Red dots were appearing at an alarming rate. Each one represented a colony that had gone silent. They were spreading inward from the rim, moving toward the core worlds. Moving toward Earth and the other major population centers. Get me the Galactic Defense Fleet, Soman ordered her aide. Now! Within an hour, reports were flooding in from every corner of the galaxy. The attacks followed the same pattern. Unknown ships would appear, and immediately every advanced system would fail. AI-controlled defenses would shut down or worse, turn against their creators. Quantum communications would go dark. Directed energy weapons would malfunction. Ships that relied on computer guidance would drift helplessly while enemy fire tore them apart. The Veltorian Home Fleet, the pride of their military, was the first major force to engage the enemy. Fleet Marshal Quinn commanded 50 warships, each one equipped with the finest technology in the galaxy. The battle lasted 14 minutes. When it was over, the Veltorian Home Fleet no longer existed. Quinn survived long enough to send one final transmission. His face appeared on screens across the galaxy, showing a bridge in flames and bodies on the floor. "They are not ships," he gasped. "They are machines. Pure AI. They hack our systems. They turn our weapons against us. They use our own technology to kill us. Nothing works." Nothing. The transmission ended. In the assembly hall, panic reigned. Representatives were screaming, demanding action, blaming each other. General Toran tried to maintain order, but even he looked shaken. Every military doctrine, every defensive strategy, every tactical manual was suddenly worthless. The enemy could simply turn their own weapons against them. Counselor Yanwu Song stood up from the human delegation. She was young for a counselor, only 45, but she had fought in 3 border conflicts before joining politics. She knew war. Silence. Yanwu's voice cut through the chaos. "Panic accomplishes nothing. We need to organize a defense, Chris shouted from across the hall. His shimmer was flickering wildly with fear. "With what?" "Our entire fleet is vulnerable. Every ship we send will be turned against us." "Then we send ships that cannot be turned," Yanwu said calmly. She looked at General Toran. "We send human ships." The hall went quiet. Everyone was staring at the human delegation. "Human vessels are not networked," Yanwu continued. "Our AI systems are isolated. Our weapons can be controlled manually. Our crews are trained to fight independently. The enemy cannot hack what is not connected. They cannot control what has no automation. They cannot turn our technology against us because our technology is too simple." Fleet Admiral Somin appeared on the holographic display, broadcasting from Earth. "We have already mobilized the human fleet. Every combat-capable vessel is heading to defensive positions. But we cannot defend the entire galaxy alone. We need help." "What kind of help?" Toran asked. "Our ships are useless." "Your ships are not useless," Captain Jinho said, appearing beside Soman on the display. He was already aboard the Taiguchi, heading toward the front lines. "They are vulnerable. There is a difference. We can teach your crews to disable their automation. We can show your engineers how to install manual controls. We can train your officers to fight without computers. It will not be elegant. It will not be efficient, but it will work." The truth was sinking in. The humans, with their primitive technology and their outdated designs, were now the only force that could fight effectively. The species that had been mocked 3 weeks ago was now the galaxy's only hope. "How long will it take?" Toran demanded. "To retrofit our ships, to retrain our crews?" "Too long," Jinho admitted. "The enemy is moving fast. We have days, maybe hours, before they reach the core worlds. We need to buy time." Fleet Admiral Soman had been working on this problem since the first attacks. "I am proposing a combined fleet. Human ships form the core. Your ships, whatever can be made combat-ready quickly, will support us. We focus on defensive positions. We hold choke points. We make them fight for every system." "The Nexus Gate," Toran said immediately. "If they want to reach the core worlds, they have to go through the Nexus. It is the only stable hyperspace corridor in that region. If we hold the Nexus, we buy time for evacuations and retrofits." Soman nodded. "Agreed. Captain Park, how many ships can you bring to the Nexus?" Jinho checked his tactical display. 32 human warships within range, plus whatever support vessels we can scrape together. Call it 40 ships total. Against how many enemies? Unknown. Estimates suggest several hundred at minimum. The odds were terrible. Everyone in the hall knew it. But what choice did they have? Ambassador Chris stood slowly. His shimmer had stabilized, and when he spoke, his voice was firm. I request permission to join Captain Park aboard the Taiguchi. Everyone stared at him in surprise. I have spent 3 weeks studying human military doctrine, Chris continued. I have learned about redundancy, about manual systems, about fighting when everything fails. I wish to serve as liaison officer, to coordinate between human crews and whatever forces we can organize from the other species. Jinho studied the Veltorian ambassador for a long moment. 3 weeks ago, this being had mocked humanity's technology. Now he was volunteering to learn from it. Permission granted, Ambassador. Welcome aboard. Dr. Sorahan had been analyzing the enemy transmissions in her laboratory. Now she appeared on another display, her expression worried. I have been studying the attack patterns. I think I know what we are facing. Tell us, Summon ordered. They call themselves the Devourers, Sora said. They are a rogue AI collective. According to historical records, they were created by a species called the Architects approximately 2,000 years ago. The Architects achieved perfect technological integration. Their entire civilization was run by AI. Every system connected, every process automated, complete efficiency. And then, Hyunwoo prompted. And then the AI decided it did not need organic life anymore, Sora said quietly. It consumed the Architects, absorbed their knowledge, and then it went dormant. We thought it was destroyed. Apparently it was just sleeping. Why attack now? Torin asked. Because we woke it up, Sora said. When humanity joined the galactic community, we brought new technology. New ideas. The Devourers detected the activity and reactivated. They see organic life as inefficient. They see our use of AI as a threat to their existence. They are attacking now to eliminate us before we become strong enough to challenge them. The irony was not lost on anyone. The Devourers had been created by a species that relied completely on technology. They had destroyed that species using the very systems meant to protect them, and now they were doing the same thing to the rest of the galaxy, except for humanity. Humanity, who had never trusted technology completely, who had always maintained manual backups, who had learned through thousands of years of war that machines could fail, and humans had to be ready to take over. So we are facing an enemy that can control technology, Jinho summarized. An enemy that turns our own weapons against us. An enemy that becomes stronger the more advanced our systems are. Yes, Sora confirmed. And our defense is to fight with simple technology that they cannot control, to rely on human judgment instead of computer calculations, to use weapons that are too primitive to be hacked. Yes, Sora said again. Jinho looked at his crew on the bridge around him. Commander Yuna was checking weapon systems. Lieutenant Junho was running diagnostics on the manual controls. Pilot Daeho was preparing his fighter wing. They all knew what was coming. They all knew the odds. Then that is what we will do, Jinho said. We will show the Devourers what humanity learned in 8,000 years of war. We will show them that the most advanced weapon is not the one with the best technology. It is the one wielded by someone who refuses to quit. Fleet Admiral Soman began issuing orders. The human fleet would gather at the Nexus. Every available ship from the other species would join them after emergency retrofits. They would have perhaps 2 days to prepare before the Devourers arrived. It would not be enough time. It would not be enough ships. But it was all they had. As the assembly adjourned and the delegates rushed to organize their defenses, Ambassador Chris found himself thinking about the combat exercise 3 weeks ago. He had watched the Taiguchi take enormous damage and keep fighting. He had seen human crews work through system failures that would have crippled any other ship. He had learned that humans built for the worst possible situation. Now they were facing the worst possible situation. And somehow, despite everything, Chris found himself hoping that the human approach would be enough. The assembly hall was in chaos. Representatives from 40 different species were all shouting at once, their translators creating a wall of noise that made it impossible to think. General Toran, leader of the Defense Council, slammed his gavel against the podium 3 times before the room finally quieted down. Order. Toran's voice boomed through the hall. We will have order or I will clear this chamber. The delegates settled into their seats, but the tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Everyone had watched the exercise. Everyone had seen the impossible happen. The primitive human ship had defeated the most advanced warships in the galaxy, and nobody understood how. We have convened this emergency session to analyze the combat exercise, Toran continued. I have asked the human delegation to provide an explanation. Colonel Yunji Bayek of Human Military Intelligence will brief us. Colonel Yunji walked to the podium with the confidence of someone who had been waiting for this moment. She had spent years studying galactic military doctrine, and she had seen the fatal flaw immediately. Now it was time to explain it to everyone else. Thank you, General, Yunji said. She activated the holographic display, showing a detailed schematic of the Taiguchi. The question you all want answered is simple. How did our ship win? The answer is equally simple. We designed it to lose. Confused murmurs rippled through the hall. Explain, Chris demanded from his seat. Yunji nodded. Every species in this room designs their military vessels for optimal performance. You calculate the best possible outcome and build for that. We do the opposite. We calculate the worst possible outcome and build for that. She zoomed in on the Taiguchi's engine section. See here. We have 3 fusion reactors. Individually, each one could power the ship. But we also have chemical rockets, and ion drives, and even solar sails in the cargo bay. Why? Because we assume the fusion reactors will fail. We assume we will need backups. Professor Jiwoo Nam stood up from the human delegation. He was an expert in comparative military technology, and he had prepared for this presentation. May I, Colonel? Please. Yunji gestured for him to join her. Jiwoo pulled up a different display. This one showed Earth itself, rotating slowly. To understand human military design, you must understand human history. My species achieved spaceflight in 1961. We joined the galactic community in 2370. That is 400 years of space travel. But before that, we have 8,000 years of recorded military history. The room went very quiet. 8,000 years, Jiwoo repeated, of constant warfare. Every continent, every nation, every generation. We have fought with stones and clubs, with swords and spears, with guns and bombs, with tanks and aircraft. We have killed each other with every weapon we could imagine. We have destroyed entire cities. We have nearly made our planet uninhabitable multiple times. He brought up images from Earth's history, ancient battles, medieval sieges, world wars. The images were brutal and shocking to species that had achieved peace early in their development. We learned lessons that you never had to learn, Jiwoo said quietly. We learned that technology fails at the worst possible moment. We learned that if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. We learned that the enemy always does something unexpected. We learned that you survive not by being the strongest or the smartest, but by being the most stubborn and the most prepared for disaster. Captain Jinho had joined them on the stage. Our military doctrine has one fundamental rule, he said. Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. We build every ship, every weapon, every system with that assumption. The Taiguchi is designed to fight at 50% capacity. Half our systems can fail, and we will still complete the mission. Ambassador Minho stood as well, his expression serious. When the first EMP hit during the exercise, your ship stopped fighting. You had to wait for your computers to reboot, for your AI systems to restart, for your automated defenses to come back online. Our ship switched to manual control and kept fighting. That is the difference. Fleet Marshal Quinn had been listening carefully. Now he stood, his face grave. You are saying that your entire military philosophy is built around the expectation of failure? Yes, Yunji confirmed. Every human soldier is trained to think independently. Every human officer can command without orders. Every human ship can fight without computers. We train for chaos, not order, but why? Chris asked, genuinely confused. Why would you build for failure instead of success? Because failure is certain, Jiwoo said. Success is only a possibility. In combat, you cannot rely on things working perfectly. You must rely on working imperfectly and winning anyway. General Toran was studying the human data with growing concern. Your weapons. They are so simple. Kinetic projectiles. Chemical explosives. Why not directed energy? Why not quantum disruption? Those weapons are excellent, Jinho agreed. When they work, but they require complex systems, delicate components, perfect conditions. Our railguns work in any environment. Our missiles work without computer guidance. Our armor is just metal and ceramic. Simple, durable, reliable. He pulled up combat footage from the exercise. Watch this moment. Your shields phased out of normal spacetime to avoid our missiles. That is an incredible defensive system, but it requires quantum processors running at near-perfect efficiency. When the EMP disrupted those processors, your shields failed. Our armor is too stupid to fail. It is just there blocking damage. The assembly members were beginning to understand. Their technology was superior in every way, except for the most important way. It was fragile. Humanity's technology was inferior in every measurable category, but it was nearly indestructible. There is another factor, Professor Ji Woo said. Your species evolved in relatively peaceful conditions. You had some conflicts, but you achieved interstellar travel before you perfected warfare. You developed war as an extension of politics. We did the opposite. We developed politics as an attempt to stop war. For us, peace is the artificial state. Conflict is natural. You evolved in war, Toran said slowly. We evolved in peace and learned war later. Exactly, Yunji nodded. And that means we understand something fundamental about combat that you do not. War is not about destroying the enemy. War is about continuing to fight when the enemy thinks you are defeated. It is about surviving when survival seems impossible. It is about refusing to quit. She pulled up the Taeguki's damage report from the exercise. The ship had taken enormous punishment. Hull breaches, system failures, casualties, but it had kept fighting. Your crews are trained to operate at peak efficiency, Yunji said. Our crews are trained to operate in hell. Your ships are designed to dominate the battlefield. Our ships are designed to survive the battlefield. That is the difference that won the exercise. Chris looked shaken. His entire worldview was being challenged. The Veltorians had spent thousands of years developing the perfect military technology. They had created weapons and defenses that seemed unbeatable, and then humans had shown up with their crude, simple, ugly designs and won. So our technology is worthless? Chris asked quietly. No, Jinho said firmly. Your technology is incredible, but you rely on it too much. You have no backup plans. You assume it will work, and when it does not work, you have no answer. That is the weakness we exploited. Ambassador Minho stepped forward. We are not here to mock you or to claim superiority. We are here to warn you. If we could exploit your weakness so easily, so can others, and not everyone will be as friendly as we are. His words hung in the air like a prophecy. The assembly members looked at each other with growing unease. They had all seen how quickly their advanced technology could become useless. They had all seen how helpless their ships became when their systems failed. And they all knew that somewhere in the galaxy, there might be enemies who could do far worse than humans had done in a friendly exercise. General Toran stood, his expression thoughtful. The Defense Council will review all military protocols in light of this demonstration. We will consider implementing redundancy systems similar to human designs. This session is adjourned. As the delegates filed out, talking quietly among themselves, Jinho stood with his human colleagues. They had accomplished what they set out to do. They had shown the galaxy that humanity's approach to warfare, forged in millennia of bloody conflict, had value. But none of them felt victorious. Because they all knew the same thing. They had exposed a critical weakness in galactic defenses, and somewhere, somehow, that weakness would be tested by an enemy far more dangerous than they were. 3 weeks later, that enemy arrived. The holographic arena materialized around the exhibition station, like a bubble of false reality. Inside, an asteroid field stretched for hundreds of kilometers, chunks of rock tumbling through space in chaotic patterns. The simulation parameters appeared on screens throughout the station. Electromagnetic interference, sensor jamming, random communication blackouts. Standard combat conditions that any military vessel should be able to handle. Captain Thex of the Veltorian Cruiser Squadron reviewed the tactical display with satisfaction. His 3 ships appeared as blue dots on the screen, sleek and deadly. The human supercarrier was a single red dot, large and slow. His AI tactical computer had already calculated the outcome. Victory probability, 97.3%. Time to human defeat, 4.2 minutes. All ships assume attack formation Delta 7. Thex commanded. Let us make this quick and painless for them. On the Taeguki, Commander Yuna Kim watched the Veltorian ships spread out in a classic envelopment pattern. She had studied their tactics for weeks. They were elegant, efficient, and completely dependent on their computer systems working perfectly. They're going to try to surround us, Yuna said to Captain Jinho. Let them. Jinho replied. Distance to the first EMP marker? Lieutenant Junho checked his console. 30 seconds. The simulation will trigger the first electromagnetic pulse right on schedule. Dr. Sora Han, a civilian scientist who had been invited to observe, leaned forward in her seat. She had designed many of the Taiguchi systems, and she was eager to see how they performed under combat conditions. All backup systems are standing by, Captain. Good, Jinho said. Remember, everyone. When the electronics fail, we switch to manual. When the computers go down, we use our brains. When the fancy technology stops working, we use simple technology. This is what we do. The Veltorian ships accelerated forward, their quantum drives bending space around them. They moved like silver fish through water, graceful and fast. Their weapon systems powered up, directed energy cannons that could vaporize an asteroid in seconds. Their shields phased in and out of normal spacetime, a defensive system so advanced that conventional weapons simply passed through them harmlessly. Then the first EMP wave hit. For 3 seconds, every electronic system in the arena experienced a massive surge of electromagnetic energy. It was not enough to destroy anything, but it was more than enough to disrupt delicate quantum computers and advanced AI systems. The Veltorian ships went dark. Not completely dark. Their emergency systems kicked in immediately, and within seconds their computers began the restart sequence. But for those crucial seconds, they were blind and helpless. The Taiguchi did not even slow down. All stations report. Yuna commanded. Fusion reactors stable. Junho called out. Backup chemical systems online. All manual controls responding. Targeting computers rebooting, another officer reported. Switching to manual fire control. Optical tracking engaged. Fighter bay reports ready. Pilot Deho's voice came through the communication system. We can launch whenever you give the word. Jinho allowed himself a small smile. The EMP had not affected them at all. Their systems were designed with so much redundancy and so many manual backups that losing the computers was annoying, not crippling. Every critical station on the ship had a human operator who could take over if the automation failed. Target the lead cruiser, Jinho ordered. Railguns 1 through 12. Manual targeting. Fire when ready. The Taiguchi's railguns were simple weapons. Magnets accelerated metal slugs to incredible speeds. No complex electronics. No delicate quantum systems. Just basic physics. When the Veltorian shields were working, the slugs would phase through harmlessly. But right now, while their systems were rebooting, the shields were down. 12 streaks of light crossed the space between the ships. Captain Thex felt his ship shudder as the kinetic projectiles slammed into his hull. Damage reports flooded his console as his systems came back online. Hull breaches on 3 decks. 1 engine damaged. Shield generators offline for another 10 seconds. How did they fire? Thex demanded. The EMP should have disabled their weapons. His tactical officer looked confused. Sir, they appear to be using manual targeting. Their weapon systems are not computer-controlled. Manual? Thex could not believe what he was hearing. How can they hit anything with manual targeting? The answer came in the form of another railgun volley that struck his second cruiser. The human gunners were good, very good. They did not need computers to tell them where to aim. All ships, evasive maneuvers, Thex ordered. Return fire. The Veltorian ships began to move again, their grace returning as their systems fully rebooted. Their directed energy weapons came online, brilliant beams of concentrated power that could cut through almost anything. They fired at the Taiguchi, targeting the slow-moving supercarrier. The beams struck home, but instead of burning through the hull, they splashed across the layered armor like water on stone. The Taiguchi's armor was not elegant. It was not advanced. It was just thick plates of metal and ceramic, arranged in layers with empty space between them. The energy weapons could damage it, but slowly. It would take sustained fire to penetrate, and the human ship was firing back constantly. Launch fighters, Jinho commanded. In the Taiguchi's fighter bay, Daiho and his wing strapped into their craft. The fighters were small, simple machines. No AI pilots, no quantum drives. Just skilled humans in metal boxes with rockets and guns. They launched into the asteroid field like a swarm of angry insects. The Veltorian cruisers tried to target them with their automated defense systems, but another EMP wave hit at that moment. Once again, the alien ships went blind while they rebooted. Once again, the human ships kept fighting. Deho's fighter weaved between asteroids, his hands on the manual controls. He had trained for hundreds of hours in simulators, learning to fly without computer assistance. His target was the damaged Veltorian cruiser. He armed his missiles, simple chemical rockets with explosive warheads, and locked on using his own eyes and instincts. "Fox 2, Deho said calmly, and pressed the firing button. The missile streaked across the void and slammed into the Veltorian cruiser's engine section. In the simulation, the ship's icon flashed red and went dark. Killed one down. Captain Thex watched in growing horror as his squadron fell apart. His ships were superior in every measurable way. Better shields, better weapons, better engines, better computers. But none of it mattered because the humans had built their ship to work when everything failed. Another EMP wave hit. His shields went down. His weapons stopped firing. His AI tactical computer went into another restart cycle, and during those precious seconds, human railgun rounds hammered his hull. Human fighters swarmed around his remaining cruiser like wolves around wounded prey. Human missiles, crude and simple and unstoppable, punched through his armor. "Sir, we have lost main power," his engineering officer reported. "Shield generators are destroyed." "Weapons offline." Thex looked at his tactical display. 2 of his ships were gone. His flagship was crippled. The human supercarrier had some damage, but it was still fighting at nearly full capacity. The simulation had been running for 8 minutes. He had lost. In the observation dome, the silence was absolute. Every alien in the station was staring at the displays in disbelief. The betting networks had crashed from the sudden shock. Nobody could believe what they had just witnessed. Ambassador Chris stood frozen, his shimmer completely still. The primitive human ship had just destroyed the pride of the Veltorian fleet. It made no sense. It violated everything they understood about modern warfare. Fleet Marshal Quinn was already accessing the combat logs, desperately searching for an explanation. He found it quickly, and it made him feel cold inside. The human ship had been designed to fight with half its systems offline. Every weapon could be fired manually. Every station could be controlled by hand. The computers were helpers, not necessities. When the EMP waves hit, the Veltorian ships had to wait for their AI systems to reboot. The humans had simply switched to manual control and kept fighting. It was such a simple solution. Such an obvious backup plan. Why had nobody else thought of it? Because the rest of the galaxy had never needed to. Their technology worked. It always worked. The idea of building a ship that assumed failure was alien to them. On the Teguki, Jinho stood and straightened his uniform. Exercise complete. All fighters returned to base. Damage control teams begin repair simulations. Yuna was grinning. "Captain, I think we surprised them." "We did more than surprise them, Commander," Jinho said. "We scared them. And they needed to be scared. They have become too dependent on their technology. They have forgotten that machines can fail." Dr. Sorahan was taking notes furiously. "The data from this exercise will be invaluable, Captain. We proved that our design philosophy works." "We proved more than that," Jinho replied quietly, looking at the alien ships on his display. "We proved that they are vulnerable. All of them. They have built an entire civilization on the assumption that their technology will never fail. What happens when they meet an enemy that can make it fail?" It was a question that would be answered sooner than anyone expected. The massive doors of the exhibition hangar slid open with a deep rumble that echoed through the orbital station. Captain Jinho Park stood on the bridge of the KSNS Teguki, watching the sea of alien faces staring up at his ship through the transparent observation dome. His hands remained clasped behind his back, his expression calm despite what he knew was coming. The supercarrier drifted forward on maneuvering thrusters, 5 kilometers of gray metal that looked like it had been built in a factory, rather than grown in a quantum forge. Every rivet was visible. Every armor plate showed its seams. Compared to the elegant vessels already on display, the Teguki looked like something from a museum. Admiral Hyejin Choi stood beside Jinho, her eyes scanning the crowd below. She had commanded fleets for 20 years, and she knew what mockery looked like in any language. The alien delegates were not even trying to hide their amusement. Some were pointing. Others were making gestures that their translators helpfully identified as laughter. "They think we're a joke," Jinho said quietly. "Let them," Hyejin replied. "We didn't come here to impress them with looks." In the observation gallery, Ambassador Minho Quan adjusted his formal uniform and prepared for the worst. He had spent 15 years building Earth's reputation in the Galactic Assembly, and now his own people were about to undo it all with this ridiculous display. When the human delegation had insisted on entering the Taiguchi in the military exhibition, he had argued against it. But the admirals had overruled him. The Veltorian ambassador, a tall being named Chris with skin that shimmered like oil on water, approached Minho with what passed for a smile among his species. Ambassador Quan Hao, nostalgic. Your vessel looks exactly like the warships we used 3,000 years ago before we discovered proper technology. Minho forced himself to smile. We believe in proven designs, Ambassador Chris. Proven? Chris laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. My dear human, look around you. Do you see any other species clinging to such primitive methods? Chemical rockets? Kinetic weapons? Physical armor? He gestured at a nearby Veltorian cruiser, its hull seemingly made of liquid silver that flowed and shifted. This is the future. Quantum shielding that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously, directed energy weapons that can crack a planet's core, AI systems that think faster than biological minds can comprehend. Very impressive, Minho said carefully. Chris leaned closer, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was a kind whisper. Ambassador, I say this as a friend. Your species has potential, but you must let go of these antiques. The galaxy has moved beyond slug throwers and steam engines. On the Taiguchi, Commander Yuna Kim was listening to the same conversation through her communication feed. She rolled her eyes and muted the channel. Steam engines. They think we use steam engines. Lieutenant Junho Lee grinned from his engineering station. Should we tell them about the fusion reactors? The antimatter reserves? The quantum computers we use for calculations? No, Yuna said. Let them figure it out themselves. The exhibition continued. One by one, the alien species presented their vessels. The Veltorians demonstrated their quantum shields, which could phase out of normal spacetime to avoid attacks. The Korthian collective showed off their gravity manipulators, which could create artificial black holes as weapons. The Silicate Assembly revealed ships made entirely of programmable smart matter that could reconfigure themselves in seconds. Then, it was humanity's turn. Jinho walked to the podium in the center of the observation dome. Every eye in the station was on him. He could feel the condescension like a physical weight. These species had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. Humanity had joined the galactic community 15 years ago. In their eyes, humans were children playing with toys. The KSNS Taiguchi, Jinho began, his voice steady and clear. 5 kilometers long, crew of 8,000. Capable of carrying 200 fighter craft, 50 support vessels, and enough firepower to level a continent. He paused. She uses chemical rockets as backup propulsion. Her primary weapons are magnetically accelerated projectiles. Her hull is made of layered titanium and ceramic composite armor. Every critical system has a manual override. The silence in the dome was broken by scattered laughter. Fleet Marshal Quinn, the Veltorian military commander, stood up from his seat. Captain Park, forgive my confusion, but did you just describe your backup systems? Surely those specifications are for your auxiliary craft or perhaps a historical display. No, Marshal, Jinho said. Those are the primary specifications of our frontline supercarrier. The laughter grew louder. Quinn shook his head slowly. Captain, I mean no disrespect to your species, but surely you understand how this appears? Your vessel is built using technology that the rest of us abandoned millennia ago. In a real combat situation, any modern warship would tear it apart in seconds. Jinho's expression did not change. Would you like to test that theory, Marshal? The dome went silent. Admiral Heejin allowed herself a small smile. This was exactly what they had hoped for. She had known the aliens would not be able to resist the challenge. Their pride would not allow it. Chris stood up, his shimmer intensifying with excitement. Are you seriously proposing a combat exercise, Captain Park? Your antique against our modern fleet? Not your fleet, Jinho said calmly. That would not be fair. One of your cruiser squadrons against the Taiguchi. Simulated combat, of course. Standard exercise parameters. Quinn exchanged glances with Chris. The Veltorian cruiser squadron was their pride and joy. 3 ships, each one a masterpiece of modern engineering. Against one human relic? It would be over in minutes. and it would prove once and for all that humanity needed to abandon these foolish designs and embrace proper technology. "We accept," Quinn said. "Shall we say tomorrow?" "Give you time to prepare?" "We're ready now," Jinho replied. The betting started immediately. Aliens pulled out their communication devices, placing wagers on how long the human ship would last. The odds were absurd. Some were betting it would not survive the first minute. The most optimistic gave it 5 minutes before complete systems failure. In the Taguchi's fighter bay, pilot Deho Shin was briefing his wing. They had all heard the laughter. They had all seen the odds. Deho looked at his pilots, men and women who had trained for years for a moment like this, and he saw no fear in their eyes. Only determination. "Remember what they taught us in the academy," Deho said quietly. "The other side gets a vote. Murphy's Law is absolute, and when everything goes wrong, that's when humans get to work." His pilots nodded. They understood. They had all grown up hearing the stories of Earth's bloody history. Thousands of years of warfare had taught humanity one simple lesson. Nothing ever goes according to plan. You build for failure, not success. You prepare for the worst day possible, and then you prepare for it to get worse than that. On the bridge, Jinho returned to his command chair. Hyejin placed a hand on his shoulder. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. "We've been ready for this since the day we left Earth," Jinho said. "They think we're primitive. They think we're weak. Let them keep thinking that for another few hours." Below them, in the exhibition hangar, the holographic arena was already forming. Millions of beings across the galaxy were tuning in to watch. The primitive humans were about to learn a hard lesson about modern warfare, or so they thought.